Hey, everybody. I hope you're doing really well. Today, I thought I'd take a few minutes and talk to you a little bit about narrative storytelling and some different types of legends we'll be looking at today. We will be focusing on American legends and tall tales, but I'll give you a little bit of background about some additional legends and fables and whatnot. But a little bit about narrative storytelling, like I've been mentioning about our other piece of literature we've been looking at. Oral tradition exists in every single culture. Okay, people tell stories by word of mouth, and it comes from pre-literate times. Before we had reading, before we had writing, people still told stories. They just didn't write them down. They told them by word of mouth, and these stories were passed down from generation to generation. Think about with your families and friends. Are there stories that you tell each other over and over again? Are there stories that come up when you have gatherings of older generations? They might tell stories that happened years ago. That's part of the narrative storytelling tradition. Now, the goals of narrative storytelling is to impart a lesson or a moral and to convey social codes of conduct. It's also to preserve a cultural identity. And some of the videos we'll be watching today, that's to try to preserve the American cultural identity or possibly to create it because America is such a new country. A little bit about storytellers. Traditionally, the storyteller holds a high place in society. It's a place of honor. These duties include advisor, court singer, poet, tribal historian, genealogist, teacher, composer, critic, warrior, traveler, and reporter. Some nicknames or titles for storytellers: griot of West Africa, bard in Gaelic, sheik in Arabic, scop in Anglo-Saxon, and Brahmin in Hindu. Those could all be considered storytellers, but they have additional roles, as I mentioned above, with their duties. Now, folk tales, these are popular stories passed on in spoken form from one generation to the next. And everybody has heard some folk tales. Some of the ones you'll watch today, you might have heard of them or they might be brand new to you. The author is usually unknown, and there's often many different versions of that same tale. So you could hear a tale that's slightly different but has a lot of the same ideas, just different versions. Now, these folk tales could be based on partial truth, but it could have been lost or hidden. Like I've mentioned before with legends inspired by real life events, yeah, there could be some real life events connected to there. One of the stories we'll be looking at, one of the folk tales or tall tales we'll be looking at, is the story of Johnny Appleseed, who was a real person. Now, folk tales consist of fables, fairy tales, old legends, even urban legends could work for that, and they could be referred to as tall tales, and we will be looking at tall tales today. There's different types of folk tales. No, you don't need to write these down. There's cumulative tales. These have increasing repetition of details that they build up to a quick ending. Kids love these stories. It's a lot of fairy tales have them. You know, think of Goldilocks and the Three Bears, where it's repetitive. It just keeps building and building. It's the same type of story over and over again. Kids like these. Pourquoi tales, these are stories that explain something, usually the creation of something or why something is. Beast tales. Animals act and talk like humans. Talking animals appear in folk tales of all cultures all over the world, and Disney Corporation has really embraced those ideas. Wonder tales or fairy tales, these are magic and supernatural. There's creatures in it, romance and adventure. There's long quest tales. They represent the glorious fulfillment of human desires. And of course, everybody gets what they want. And realistic tales, these are few with there's some basis in fact, but there's not a whole lot of those. The setting in folk tales is usually described briefly and easily, and it lets us, the reader or the listener, use our imagination to fill in the gaps. You know, it takes place in a cottage, in the woods, or in a magical kingdom, but we can kind of fill in what works with our imagination. The time is a fantasy time, such as once upon a time, a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away. But time and place are very generalized, very broad. The themes in folk tales, our characters go through a test to prove something. The character must solve a problem, very much like the hero's journey that we've looked at before. The hero's journey also shows up in folk tales. Good versus evil. There's good characters, there's bad characters, and there's not a lot of in between. The good characters are all good, the bad characters are all bad. But as 21st century readers, we kind of like to look at the in between. We know that not all good characters are good and not all bad characters are bad. But in a lot of these folk tales, they're either all good or they're all bad. Good is rewarded and evil is punished in the end. Happily ever after says it all. Okay. Characterization in folk tales, the characters change only after they have learned a lesson during the story. And that can connect back to the hero's journey too. The characters change because of something they went through, something they learned. Our hero is usually young, fair, as in good looking, kind, brave, unselfish, and might possess some sort of special power. So, a lot of stories you might think of, folk tales, fairy tales, our hero usually fits most of those boxes. There's a magic helper, usually, like a fairy godmother, who allows for things to occur in the story that otherwise would have been impossible. So, you need some kind of magic in there. A lot of stories that occurs. The animals can talk and wishes are granted. Again, Disney loves that type of stuff. Happy ending, good always wins, of course. Now, there are some common elements in there. There are stereotypes that show up in this. Wolves are bad. Rescuers are always male. That shows up quite a bit. There's representatives of certain values. Wealth and beauty both equal happiness, where we know that that is not the truth. Okay. Just because you're wealthy doesn't mean you're happy. Just because you're beautiful doesn't mean you're happy. But a lot of those stereotypes show up in the stories. We have the involvement of supernatural forces, fairy godmothers, creatures that can talk, and the tales are based around themes like trickery or foolishness. Those definitely show up. Some of the motifs in folk tales, these are distinctive features. We have magical powers, transformations, a magical object of some sort, wishes, trickery, the power of naming something, enchanted sleep. All of those show up. And tall tales, these are a type of folk tale. And the cartoons on the right, we'll actually be looking at some of those in just a few minutes. But tall tales, they provide enjoyment to many. They stretch the imagination through colorful language, humorous exaggeration, hyperbole. We're going to see that Paul Bunyan is super huge and big. They're often about the frontier days of the US. The US was trying to establish itself with its own unique culture. So a lot of these tall tales were created to make America America. They often feature oversized people and exaggerated deeds, like everything is big and over the top. They're also known as lying tales because people knew, for the most part, they weren't true. They might have a little bit of fact, but for the most part, they weren't true. Tall tales, they come from many different countries and cultures, and we could see in some of these stories that some cultures from different parts of the world are incorporated into it because a lot of immigrants came over from America and brought their stories with them. Now, we're going to be looking at, it's actually a collection of 4 Disney cartoons of different tall tales. And these are classic American tall tales. They're made from all different years, but they were compiled into this one DVD. And as you are watching this, you are going to be answering these questions for these 4 different tales. How is this tale uniquely American? How can this tale connect to us today? And how does this tale show exaggeration, history, or cultural values? So you will be looking at this worksheet. Okay, so if you are in level 1, you're going to fill out 10 boxes of your choice. And if you're in level 2, you're going to fill out 7 boxes of your choice. There are 12 boxes total. So the first story we're going to watch is about John Henry. The second one about Johnny Appleseed. The third one about Paul Bunyan, and the fourth one about the brave engineer. So I'm going to let you get going. You are going to have this class and the next class to finish up this worksheet. So I'm expecting you to have listened to my little speech here and watch the DVD, which is I think it's about 45 minutes long or so, and then fill out the worksheet. So you have 2 days to get that done, and then pop that into Google Classroom. I will grade it and put it into PowerSchool. I hope all of you are doing really well. I hope you're safe. I hope your families are healthy. I hope you're healthy. And let me know if I can help in any way. All right, everybody, take care, and I will see you soon. Bye.